Are we ready to start, Nikki?
All right, if everyone else is ready, I think we're ready. We've been ready. So ready.
Do you want to read this before you read it?
I'm sorry.
Do you want to see what you're going to read before you read it? Since you want to cut it down for me.
I think that's all.
All right, our first reader tonight is Nikki Ummel. The co-founder. Nikki Ummel is a queer writer, editor, educator in New Orleans. Nikki has been published or has work forthcoming in Painted Bride Quarterly, The Adroit Journal, The Georgia Review, and others. She has been nominated for the Pushcart Prize, Best New Poets, Best of the Net, and is this Clem? CLMP, Clem?
Oh, CLMP, yeah.
CLMP, yeah. CLMP Firecracker Awards. She is the 2022 winner of the Leslie McGrath Poetry Prize. Nikki is a reader for Podunk Review and editor for Bear Review, as well as the co-founder of Liminal Lit, an arts organization focused on readings, workshops, and residencies. She has a poetry chapbook, Hush, and a hybrid chapbook, Vayu Sonata. You can find her on the web at nikkiyummel.com.
All right. I guess I'll join you all sitting on the stools.
Yeah, join us.
Hello. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Blue Cypress Books, for having books on hand. We love to see it. So I'm going to read 3 little poems about endometriosis and pelvic congestion syndrome, which are 2 diagnoses that I received in 2021. Yeah, the time still doesn't seem to exist for me, and I don't know if I'm ever going to get that back. I think it was 2021. So this first one is called pelvic congestion syndrome. I'm really excited to read these, by the way, because I normally don't bust these out during readings because they make people feel uncomfortable.
And talk about those.
Yeah, exactly. People start looking and shuffling their seats and looking at the door like, I need an escape plan. Pelvic congestion syndrome. Lead-bellied, except deeper, lower. Uterus groaning, I'm tired of losing. And what of this body? My mother splayed on the bed, spread her labia, and said, see, this is how it goes, and plunged a tampon in the day she found a washcloth dyed with me. And today, my pelvic floor therapist jellied her glove, stuck her hand in, listened for my vacating womb reverberate, I'm sick of this shit. 1 hour a week, I'm pried open. Lay there a prodded prize cattle ready for mating. Come on, join the crowd. Put your ear to my bull belly. Hear the tender arterial jam. My interstate of veins strangling themselves to get free. I heard this was a cool thing people do when they read. Oh, here they are, Michelle.
This is a new thing to me.
Snaps.
Yeah.
It was cool.
Yeah.
Everyone gets one. That's your prize for being here. So this poem is a visual poem that looks like a belly button because it's about my belly button, which is when I had surgery, they went in through my belly button.
Me too.
And completely changed what my belly button looks like, which I never thought that was a thing I would care about, but it is, because it no longer looks like my belly button. So this is called Ode to My Belly Button. So you can stare at it, but I have the words on it. Ode to My Belly Button. I have not always been kind to you. Jealous once of my sister's Audi and the way strangers called it cute. There are years I barely gave you attention, ignored you in the shower so frequently, Malcolm nicknamed you Stinky. A year since you changed. Nobody warned me that the surgery would rearrange your face. How many hands touched you that day? After, I tried to protect you, swaddled you in breathy skirts, bought the fancy pharmacy cream, but laparoscopy condemned you to birth thick, yellow caterpillars. Now scar tissue morphs your mouth and the stench intensifies. Last week I found a hair in you, curled tight and sticky. I don't know whose or For how long? The dog knows. She says hello every morning. Better days, you and I. We've had better days. Maybe that's why people feel uncomfortable. That sounds kind of gross, but it's true.
Being uncomfortable is other people's problem. I don't want to know the truth.
Yeah. First of all, everyone's belly button gets stinky when you sweat inside of it, okay? It's important to wash it. Here's your daily reminder to wash your belly button. It's just really important to wash mine now. And this last poem is called On the Seventh Day Post-Op. Lo, the angel heart, snapping air from temple to temple, holy rejection complete in its release, and lo, blood fountain forth, curled feline in this busted belly button, and lo, this deluge of dirt and iron, a two-headed geyser blotting shirt and shorts alike, and lo, the headache of locusts, buzzards ready to peel the blood-caked flesh to flesh to flesh. That was written the day that my belly button started bleeding, and I was on my period at the same time, and I was like, why? There's just blood everywhere.
What's next? My eye.
Yeah, right. Like, how many other orifices can I bleed from? Is your belly button an orifice? It should be if it doesn't count. All right, and then I'm closing with my little hybrid manuscript that I'm really excited. It has excerpts of which I've won an honorable mention and a few different things, and run around and blah, blah, blah. So someday it'll be published, I guess. So this is the journey. I wrote this when I was actually still delirious from pain meds after my surgery. And have been kind of working on it since then. Michelle, you've heard some of this, right? You count down from 10 like the anesthetist, that's a hard one. I'm starting over. You count down from 10 like the anesthetist commanded. Your brain catches on a conversation as your eyes close, and you hear the nurse, Deborah, chime to her trainee. The procedure is pretty neat. Through the belly button like untying a knot. Deborah was the name of your mother. A fact that bullets your hippocampus as you slur, well, I get a new belly button, I like this one, but the cocktail cruising your veins snags your collar and drags you on board. They are burning away difficult cells, aiming to kill the ache in you and Patricia. The woman who holds your breathing tube smiles, means to assure you all is well, your body is good, and you want to punch her. Amazingly, your name is also Patricia. A fact that refuses to slip past you as you fight the desire to tell her to go fuck herself in her kind grin. Your hand twitches at the thought of violence. You punch her. Or at least you think you do, except you're also sobbing and none of your body responds to the call for violence. Even your face is unmoving and there's wet behind your head, and you hear from outside the tsunami of your mind. She's in pain, increase her dose. And you know it's Patricia showing sympathy. She must not have seen the fire run to your fingertips before the tide snuffed it out. It figures that even here in the hospital, you choose violence over intimacy, preferring to stand alone as the hurricane ravages your body, which is how you ended up here 6 months after symptom onset. Figures. And then it happens. Your eyes flicker and it's clear you are not supposed to be here in this moment of flesh. Perceiving the throb in your abdomen, 1 inch to the right of a ½ inch puncture, just wide enough for the camera to tunnel, confirm cells dizzy with power. That faces another puncture, 2 inches to the left, hooked through the belly button. Deborah sees your eyes flutter and chirps, oh, this happens sometime, no problem, you just up the dose. And then you are gone again, your mouth still cupping the words please and home. Your pillow is slick and sticky. Ma'am, it's time, get up now. It's time to go. Gloved hands slide underneath your back and another pair cradle your legs beneath the knees. She doesn't look good. Your body is propped up in a wheelchair, your mouth sags open. You try to speak, but your tongue is thick, sticks to your cheeks and you gag on its swollenness. A torrent of vomit slurries down your chest and rests in your lap. Your face is wet and you realize for the first time that you are crying. Have been for a while. Everything hurts. A straight-mouthed nurse swipes your lap with a wet cloth and wheels you to the elevator. Your boyfriend rushes from the car, hugs you to his chest. He asks, are you okay? And then realizes how stupid that is. You cannot climb a single step into his Lincoln, so he lifts you and you flinch. Your whole body feels rent, torn open and glued back together, like your stuffed Pikachu in 3rd grade when you decided to play surgery. Everything hurts. Your clothes, the ones you wore this morning when you checked into the hospital, are crumpled in a plastic bag on your lap. You move it to vomit violently in a Church's Chicken parking lot. Your boyfriend rubs your back and you catch him for the first time looking afraid. You will see this face many times over the next 30 days in the corner of your eye, in rearview mirrors, reflected in the bedroom window where you pretend to sleep. As you bob up and down on the surface of pain, you feel a twitch of guilt. Everything hurts. It started 6 months ago. Out of town for your birthday, you go to Universal Studios, excited about Harry Potter. You drink butterbeer, cast spells, left side some knots, tight pain, delirious, unable to walk, no, deep, inherently female. Try everything. Hours later, pain ebbs. Weed, alcohol, pain relievers begin to undress. As your boyfriend works your body, ride. Climax weaves pleasure and pain. After he falls asleep, hold your belly, bite the pillow, and sob. Home from Orlando. Your relationship strains as you learn to avoid sex. 3 months trickle by, a whirlwind of tests and appointments. Your gynecologist whips out every trick, ultrasounds, blood tests, pap smears, you name it, and you do. He tries it. The results are inconclusive, yet the debilitating stab that mars every orgasm persists. Your relationship strains as you learn to avoid. Sometimes the knives in your gut slice for hours, cut through whole days. When unable to avoid intimacy, you train your brain to think of boring things. Baseball, bird watching, anything to keep your body from sensation, to prevent climax. Your relationship strains. One day, during a dry run of your class's upcoming art exhibit, your doctor calls. Despite the awkward timing and the presence of students you answer, he has results from your recent hysteroscopy. After reviewing the lack of evidence, he tells you as you press your cell phone to your left ear and balance 2 paintings on your right knee, I think the only diagnosis left to confirm is endometriosis. But I cannot say for sure without performing laparoscopic surgery. You clear your throat, which draws the attention of several students. I will do whatever you say. I just want this pain to go away. He tells you a date, July 23rd. You repeat it, and something in your tone causes the student next to you to wrap her arms around your middle. You hang up the phone and tell the student, I'm fine. Surgery, across the tiny square. July 23, cross each day. Time is someone else, mind, body, circle surgery. 7 times, black Sharpie, this body is good, this body. On July 22, you drive yourself to the hospital for your surgery consultation. You check no when asked about sensitivity to anesthesia. You do not remember driving home. This body is good. You do not remember driving home. You check no when asked about sensitivity to anesthesia. On July 22, you drive yourself to the hospital for your surgery consultation. Good body. You drive yourself to the surgery consultation for the hospital. You check anesthesia when asked about sensitivity to no. You do not drive home. On July 22, the hospital drives to your surgery consultation about sensitivity to anesthesia. Asked, you check home. You do not remember. Good body. What a good body. I'm not going to read this page. You arrive. You check in with the outpatient center. You're handed a folder of literature. You never read it. A yellow band is placed around your left arm. It reads fall risk. You are told, do not take off. You are told, a small fraction of people respond badly to anesthesia. Some experience throat pain from the breathing tube. Some develop urinary tract infections. After catheter removal, it will take several days for the carbon dioxide to migrate from your abdominal cavity to the rest of your body. This process will be very painful. All of this will be very painful. You will not be able to walk. You are a fall risk. Use narcotics. Use narcotics with caution. Use narcotics. Your body is good. Do not worry. All is well. You go under and surface several hours later. Everything hurts. The scratchy ache of your breathing tube, burning catheter, even the IV refuses to let go. Bruises your left hand on the way out. Your belly swollen with gas, surgery yellow, pulpy to touch and oozing. Contracts, the nothingness of stomach, everything hurts. picture from the day after my surgery. Your mouth paints O around the kitchen drain as you try to lap up the liquid Vicodin you spilled. If you are your father's daughter, this compulsion birthed in fatherhood's backwash is a terror that sings, you need these to be okay. You lick the sink. If you are not your father's daughter, you hesitate. Head in the sink, know that this is a choice. A chance for bravery because you know you don't need them despite the good intentions of Dr. Von Ummel. You lied when you filled out the patient intake form. You did not reveal your father's daily love of drugs paired with Coors Light, nor the way you choose to torment the parts of him that live in you. A full bottle of Oxy from your running accident. Some days you palm it, place it in your work bag just to see what you are capable of. You rinse out the sink. It is, as it has always been, a battle for your attention. For while Dr. Von Ummel, unknowing of your father's afflictions, prescribed paradise, his presence was summoned by your mother who prayed too much chutzpah into your uterus that it refuses to be contained. Yield to no man, she whispered as you sponged the crust from her lips, her belly a situs swollen, similar to yours now, except yours is full of gas, not liquid. A cavity balloon to allow for clear skies as the tiny camera snaked its way between skin and organ. Your mother has been gone 17 years, yet you can still feel her papery yellow skin, the squish of her stomach as each organ filled with fluid, sputtered, and then blinked out one by one. As your mother incited secret riot deep in your uterine tissue, she wore a gown not dissimilar to the one that drapes your frame. Planting cells of rebellion to migrate up your tubes reside in wait like a genetic gunpowder plot. Don't worry. Your Guy Fawkes are hunted and burned. Your body is good. Your cells will continue this doomed dance. Migration from the uterus, upstream swimming. You think of all the times you told yourself, I am never having kids. Now you worry you have no say in the matter, that your cells will never divide to become children. You stand over the kitchen sink and retch. Your hair is rancid and steaming, reeks of broccoli cheddar soup, limp and slurry, your nasal cavity teeming. You still look for 4 months pregnant. The gas from your belly begins to migrate to other body cavities, causing you to grip the kitchen counter in a full body flinch. There is no one home to lovingly sponge the surgical orange from your torso or spoon ice chips to your dry lips. You are thirsty. You wince at your empty belly so round it presses the sink hello. This was your mother's doing. You wish you told Deborah to keep her fucking words to herself. 30 days blur together, a mixture of fear and pain. Your relationship swells with tension as your boyfriend resents the role of caretaker. You arrive at the threshold of your post-op appointment. You still cannot wear pants, forced instead into a wraparound skirt that cradles your stomach, bulging blue and purple. Bruises you do not believe will fade. You hide your 3 new scars, lines you trace tenderly in the shower. The doctor shows you many pictures, evidence of endometriosis and something more sinister. Swollen veins, worm-like, bulbous, and pale. You catch the phrase varicose veins and pelvic congestion syndrome, but the doctor is speaking fast, too fast, and then he opens the door to wheel himself away, and from the sealed window of your throat you squeak, wait! And he turns impatient. Will I be in pain for the rest of my life? His eyes lock into yours, and he sternly replies, yes, your condition is chronic, there is no cure, and he shuts the door. You blink back a tide of tears and slowly pull your clothes back on. On the way home, you text your boyfriend about dinner. Afraid to broach the subject of children, no longer have confidence in your future. You love him. You do not know who he will be if he knows the extent of your condition. Medicine helps alleviate the waterfall of blood pouring into your uterus, makes you have to pee all the time, murders your libido, your nice skin. He jokes with shine in his eyes. Better take a pregnancy test. Crack a smile. Something about this pain, inherently female, and everything hurts.
Thank you, Nikki Ummel.
Ooh, yeah.
Or maybe not. Next up we have Tracey Lindeman. Go ahead and do that thing. Do that thing. Tracey Lindeman is a longtime freelance journalist whose work has appeared in The Guardian, The Atlantic, Al Jazeera, and many other publications. She is also the author of Lead, Destroying Myths and Misogyny in Endometriosis Care, out March 21st, 2023 on ECW Press, also available for sale here in New Cyprus. A book informed in part by her 24-year struggle to get her extreme chronic pain diagnosed and treated. She is from Montreal and is currently based in Western Quebec, Canada.
Oh, Tracey. I'm not, one second. I'm not going to do a super long reading because I'd like to also get into some discussions with our friend here from Tulane, Katie Lee. But I'm just going to read a little bit from the prologue. So have you ever been told that the pain you feel is imaginary? That the mental anguish you experience from being trapped in a cycle of feeling bad and then feeling bad about feeling bad could be solved with a better attitude and a brisk walk? Or have you tried yoga, meditation, eating probiotic yogurt, drinking unicorn blood on a full moon? Perhaps you just need to get off your phone, get out into nature, get into woodworking, go on a vision quest, maybe learn to crochet or take up archery or create YouTube makeup tutorials. And your Kegels help get that pelvic floor into fighting shape. When you have an invisible disease like endometriosis, you hear versions of this all the time. Your friends will tell you they get cramps too. Your partner will tell you to relax. Your doctor will suggest hormonal birth control to tame the pain and the bleeding, and then antidepressants to control the depressive side effects of the birth control. And then, when your libido is sufficiently annihilated, they will simply shrug and ask, have you tried losing weight? This is death by a million paper cuts, little barbs of misogyny meant to undermine your suffering and shut you up. No one wants to hear about the feeling of daggers being plunged into your abdomen and being twisted around. No one wants to know how sad, how lonely, how angry you are, not only about being sick, but about how your doctors won't do more than the barest of minimums to help you be a little less sick. You are an island. There are, according to the World Health Organization, 190 million islands on this planet. People with endometriosis. The real figure is probably double that. They say about 10% of people assigned female at birth are said to experience the disease, and there are about 4 billion of us. Some people don't know they have it, others know they have it, but they have not persuaded the right people to give them a diagnosis. In North America and much of the westernized world, people spend an average of 7 to 10 years trying to get properly diagnosed. Not 7 to 10 years from the onset of symptoms, but 7 to 10 years of actively and persistently lobbying doctors to try and figure out what's wrong with them. As such, the average age at diagnosis is somewhere around 28. So what exactly is endometriosis? In the simplest of terms, it's a disease defined by the growth of endometrial-like tissue outside of the uterus. These growths, called endometriomas, lesions, and adhesions, attach to ovaries, fallopian tubes, and the exterior of the uterus, as well as the bowel, and sometimes as far away as the kidneys, the diaphragm, the lungs, and even the brain. For some people, it's as if a bottle of glue was poured into their abdomen, and as the glue hardens, organs become stuck together. In an overwhelming majority of cases, the disease is marked by chronic pain and inflammation, infertility, and long, heavy menstrual periods. Migraines, digestion problems, and sexual dysfunction, including painful orgasms, such as described in Nikki's poem, are also common. Endometriosis can occur in anyone born with a uterus, and in a microscopic handful of people born without one. There is no cure. Worse, there's not even scientific consensus on how it's caused or how it operates. That said, some researchers suspect the disease has genetic and epigenetic foundations, the latter meaning change in gene functioning and, one moment. So gene functioning and expression that don't change our DNA sequence with strong links to hormonal and autoimmune functioning. All this, and still endometriosis is overwhelmingly treated like a bad period by the people in our lives, by the medical system that's meant to treat us, and by those who create the policies and laws that shape and perpetuate this misunderstanding. This is not a coincidence. It is systemic disregard for our lives. So I'm gonna stop there. And I'd love to kind of get started in our conversation. So perhaps we can formally introduce Katie here.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Tracey.
Now
Let's do that again.
I like the uniform.
So our moderator for the Q&A is Catherine, aka Katie Lee, a biological anthropologist and engineer studying women's health using theoretical perspectives derived from feminist biology and anthropology. She teaches an interdisciplinary class called Menstruation, Biology, and Culture, which incorporates material on physiology, medicine, history, and the broader social context of menstruation. As part of her research, Catherine studies the biology of menstrual cycle variation and the menstrual experience of a diverse group of people. Her research on the effects of the COVID-19 vaccine on menstrual cycles has been covered by the New York Times, BBC, CBS, Washington Post, Chicago Tribune, NPR, and other national and international news media outlets. In addition, this project has influenced federal funding for menstrual cycle research and led to an update of the European Union list of potential vaccine side effects. Catherine has a PhD in anthropology with a minor in gender and women's studies from the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign,
It's the Midwest.
It's Urbana. It's Urbana, you guys. An MS in Business Administration from Texas A&M, Texarkana, know that one. Yeah, and a BS in Biomedical Engineering from Tulane University. Thank you so much for being here, Katie.
So, absolutely. I loved reading both of your pieces and hearing them read. And I wanted to start, because this is a literary space, by asking how both of you have used writing to sort of manage and work through or deal with the emotions and the shit that goes on with the entire gynecological endometriosis system process.
So when I was in recovery after my surgery, I didn't know what else to do but to write about what was happening in my body. Like, it was the only way for me to process what was physically occurring, and it's a relief to be able to use words in that way. I know that many of the folks in the room are writers, but it's also a burden. And so I don't want it to be like, oh, once I wrote it down, it was so great. It's like, I mean, even just reading it, I got emotional because it's an emotional experience, and writing for me is an emotional experience as well. So like, I was like standing up for the first time in days, like at the computer, writing this out and just like sobbing, because I was like, I don't know what's happening in my body, or like if I'm ever gonna be okay. But I'm also so grateful to be able to channel that into something that can maybe help other people. Yeah.
I dealt with it by writing about everything else except my own suffering. So I have been a freelance journalist for almost 20 years, but I never wrote about health, and I never wrote about myself until I finally got diagnosed, and then it felt like there was an arc to my story. It took 24 years to get diagnosed. And it was, up until that point, just like a long, endless parade of suffering. And then finally something happened. And I was like, maybe there is like maybe I'm on the other side of the hill now. Like maybe I'm going downhill. Like I had got some momentum, and I was just so angry at what I had dealt with and what I had lived through, and how everyone was just like get a better attitude. Maybe lose some weight. And so then I felt like it was the catalyst for me to be able to actually sit down and write about it. And when I sat down to write about it, I wrote the first draft of the book in 4 months. And it was just like nonstop, just like sitting at my computer. Like I was just like propelled by fury and also a deadline, but definitely anger as well.
Thank you guys both so much. One of the things I really loved about your book is during part of it you talk to and you share the stories of a number of people who have endometriosis. And one of the things we talk about in the class that I teach is just how not talking about periods, experience with endometriosis means people go so long thinking that something is normal because it's normal for them. And being turned away when they try to seek care for so long and dismissed for so long. So I wanted to say I really appreciate that because by not talking about things like endometriosis, people will wait 24 years. So I wanted to say thank you for that and for both of you for writing these experiences.
Can I say something super fast?
Yeah.
I also I don't know, this just occurred to me. When I went back, so I started having pain again, I don't know, 8 months ago. And I went back to my gynecologist, who is lovely in so many ways, but you know, the medical industrial complex, it's like you have 5 minutes with your doctor and they might not even remember your name, even though I've been seeing him for 7 years. He's in and out, you know.
What was your problem again?
Yeah, exactly. He's like, oh, we did
And we
surgery.
trust these people.
He's like, I've had my fingers inside of your vagina for 7 years. Like, I've seen the most intimate parts of you, and I don't remember. Like, I'm like, oh, typical man. But yeah, I went in, and he was like, oh, you have pain again. Just double your. I'm on Aldacto, which is supposed to help with blood pressure to my blood pressure, but it limits the blood flow to my uterus, which is supposed to help. Anyway, I was like, I've heard that pelvic floor therapy is really useful. He had never brought this up. And he was like, oh, yeah. Lots of people like think, you know, good results from that. And I'm like, are you fucking serious? Like, I've had pain for the last 18 months and you've never suggested this as a treatment for me, ever, not once. And so it was through talking with other women who had endometriosis that I realized that. It was through being public, it was through telling my story. So posting it on Instagram and being like, this is what I'm experiencing. That was when people were like, have you tried this? And so yeah, that storytelling, that story sharing is so important.
Yeah. Related to that, pelvic floor PT is good for a lot of things. It should be like standard care after people give birth, just to make sure that like everything's good there. And we have a dearth of people who can do pelvic floor PT, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't even know how you end up in that job, right? Like what is your career path where you're like, I'm interested in science and health, then you end up as a pelvic floor PT. But in Illinois where I did my grad work, there's one for like a multi-county region. And she was actually off on her own maternity leave. And so no one could get pelvic floor PT in central Illinois for months, right? Like this is the state of our healthcare for something that should be really common and accessible, and people should know that it can help. Because without exploring the pathways to see where people can manage their pain in these ways, we turn to weird wellness things that I'm sure you guys have both seen lots of problematic sales pitchy things for wellness for endometriosis.
Yeah, I just want to quickly mention that while I was preparing to come here today, I found actually a bunch of pelvic PTs in New Orleans. They're real.
Yeah.
They exist.
There's one here.
Yay! I've been working in pelvic health for like 7 years now. When I started, there were 4 of us. Now there's like 25 in New Orleans.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we've grown a lot. When you go to doctors and you talk to way more accepted now, and our field is growing. So we all have our doctorates in physical therapy. And so for me, I enjoy serving underserved patient populations, and public health is so underserved. So that's initially like why I went that route, and that's why I stayed in that route. And patients are loving the work. Yeah.
I just wanted to also mention there are, like I got a bunch of coupons from the person who invented the pelvic one.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah, she's a pelvic PT. There's coupons there, they're free. You can grab them if you want them, share them with your friends. Take them all, please. It's less stuff I have to bring around with me.
All right, so, I know you guys both shared stories about your experiences. What do people without endometriosis need to know? Like, what do you wish people knew besides it's more than a bad period?
Everybody knows somebody with endo. At least one person. They may not tell you. They may not even know that's what is going on with them. But you know somebody, at least one person, who's living in abject pain and who maybe not telling you about it because they think it's their fault, that it's their problem, that they're abnormal, that they're weird. And I thought my periods were normal for the longest time because no one told me that the pain I was in was not normal. And so it was like, I was like a full-on adult, like before I learned that wasn't normal. And so that's like the one thing that like, if you're not able to get up, to put pants on, if you take an Advil and you still feel like you're dying, it's not normal. And for me, that was like such a revelation to be like, oh, it's not my fault. Like I didn't do this somehow to myself. And that, I don't know, that we deserve care and to not live lives of pain for whatever reasons.
So I, contrary to our statement so far, I don't have a heavy period. I have an IUD. I've been, this is my third IUD, so I barely get a period at all. And I'm a runner, and so I've always been like super physically active, like, and not just like I run, but like I run ultramarathons, things like that. So like my period is very sparse. However, what led to my diagnosis was the immense pelvic pain I was having during orgasm. And then it's just like expanded beyond that. It was like sex in general, or like masturbation. It was like any sort of like tightening that was happening down there. Going to the bathroom sometimes, like clutching the toilet, crying because I was in so much pain. So I guess what I would want people to know is like, if you're like, oh, but I don't really get a period, or oh, it's never been that bad, but like you have any pain down there, that should not happen though. Like it really should not. And if it's like during other activities, if it's squatting, if it's going to the bathroom, if it's like anything that's like a tightening or even a releasing, that should not be a painful experience. Yeah. So that's a sign.
I also had adenomyosis or adenomyosis, but I couldn't tell you what belonged to what condition. But I do know that adenomyosis causes very brutal periods as well. So you can have one or the other. A lot of people have both.
What can people do if you know someone who has endometriosis and you know someone who's suffering with these experiences? What would be helpful for your friends and family to do, right? To either acknowledge your pain or to help make your life better, make it less lonely. Yeah.
Don't tell them you know what it's like, unless you also have endo. You're like, I get kind of stupid. Like, I swear to God, the number of people that were like, is it really that bad? And I was like, I'm gonna stab you in the fucking face. Like, it just, yeah, like what people can do is to be like, I'm so sorry for what you're going through, to validate it, to be like, you shouldn't have to live like this. Like, just those little things can do so
Come on
much.
in, come on in. You're fine.
We're talking about pelvic pain. That's interesting to you.
But if you want some pie, it goes really well with pelvic. It's the alliteration, that's how you know.
Remember what I was saying.
I'm sorry.
But yeah, like just validating your pain and just being like, yeah, that sucks. And like, don't try to compare it to anything else. Comparisons don't help.
I will have a moment of public, what's it called? I'm like laying myself bare in front of you. The year before the pandemic, I had a coworker when I was teaching who had really severe endometriosis, and this is before I was diagnosed. And so she was absent from work. We were teachers. She was absent from work often because she was in so much pain. And sometimes she would come to work and have to go home, and there are days when she would be physically in pain, like you could see it on her. And part of me was like, really, like, it can't be, come on. Like, and it's an awful thing to admit, but I just didn't know what was happening inside of her. And instead of being like, you clearly, and sometimes it was just like, there are fifth graders being sent to your classroom and you're in so much pain you can't stand up to receive them, and now they're fighting and all, you know what I mean? Like, sometimes it's just like, come on. And now it's like, holy shit, like she needed like support. She needed people who understood what she was going through. So yeah, so that idea of like not saying you understand, and two, like not being judgmental. Like if someone's saying they're experiencing something in their body, they are. Like no one's lying about being in critical pain. But it's a chronic condition that's like largely untreatable besides surgery, which several of my friends who have endo have had multiple rounds of surgery. That's like part of the diagnosis. And so like, it is chronic.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know that until it was me.
Yeah. I think as people who experience a lot of pain, you become like a judge of other people's pain. Like people who are oppressed are often some of the worst offenders of oppression. It's kind of the same thing.
It's real, yeah.
Like, and I think, yeah, like it was just like, oh well, I've lived through such terrible things. Like no one else has the pain like I have the pain, you know. And like actually, like maybe that's not true. And so being like, yeah, if someone says it's happening, believe them. Like it's really the least people can do, right?
So thinking about that, it makes me think about the inability to accept sort of disability and pain in public, right? In our society, right? So if you have fifth graders coming into your classrooms, right, there's not really much you can do given the pain. So do you think there's room for, while acknowledging the uniqueness of endometriosis and experience in that utter horrid situation of the diagnosis delay, building some sort of a solidarity with other groups of people who have long-term chronic disabling conditions, and what would that look like to you?
Instagram. That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
I mean, chronically ill people are using social media to find each other and to share information across different conditions and across different groups of people. Something kind of related to your question, but a little bit, I'm going to take it a little bit further, is that, like for me, like I would just like to acknowledge that we're 3D people who look white and cis. But I made a point of interviewing Black people, Indigenous people, queer Black people, queer Indigenous people, fat Indigenous people, like just different people about their different experiences, just to recognize and to help other people understand that having endometriosis is not, there's not a singular experience. Like it's compounded by all the various forms of discrimination you experience in this life and all of the, the places you come from. Like, yeah, I'm like a white cis lady. I was also raised in in a welfare home, and I, you know, as an adult, I mean, I have a lot of tattoos and stuff like that. People make a lot of assumptions about your status in life because of that. I'm a bigger person. I've pretty much from every doctor I've ever met, their advice is always, have you considered losing weight? And it's like, sir, I have a mirror. And like, if you, like, I've known myself my entire life. Like, I know what this is all about, you know? Like, I've been bigger, I've been lighter, and I've always had this pain. So like, why don't you just treat me as a person instead of a body, right?
What's Steve Irwin's daughter's name? Bindi. So I don't know if y'all saw this, it went viral. Bindi Irwin was recently diagnosed with endometriosis and she had surgery. And her post about it was all over Twitter and Instagram. And it was the first time that my sister acknowledged, I'm getting emotional. Sorry.
It's okay.
It was the first time my sister had acknowledged what I was going through.
That was heavy.
She sent it to me. She was like, oh my gosh. Like, this is a very famous person who has your same condition. Like, I think I have more of an understanding of what's been happening.
She didn't understand you.
No.
But I can relate to a celebrity.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's like a whole thing, right? Where like people feel like celebrities, they know celebrities, and even though she knows me, it's like, yeah, no. It's like that family thing where your family's like, oh, you're just exaggerating, you're just whatever, you want attention. It's you revert with your siblings specifically, I think, to like your childhood self. So as much as she loves me, I don't think she got it. But reading Bindi's post about it meant a lot to her, and she like came to me with that. And so to your point about social media, it is powerful. And I wouldn't have found out about pelvic floor therapy if it weren't for social media, right? That was some random person who saw my post who was like, hey, have you tried pelvic floor therapy? This is what's worked for me. And I was like, thank you. And so, yeah, I think meeting people in that way is important, forming those communities. It's also alarming to me that endometriosis is not considered a disability when it is literally, for some people with endo, like an extremely debilitating thing that requires them to be bedbound or homebound for days on end. Like my coworker, like again, in retrospect, like she was at work because she didn't have sick days left.
Yeah.
That's a fucking problem. And so like that status, especially because our like, if you don't know, the medical history of the United States is very racist and sexist and classist. And so like with that in mind, like the fact that our very like male-dominated medical establishment doesn't recognize an exceptionally like female, and I just mean like biologically, issue, condition, disease, chronic illness, like shouldn't be surprising, but it's also like so horrific that that's, you know?
Yeah.
Like, didn't it take forever for breast cancer screening, like, to be counted for ancient, like, it's like, what? The fact that we had to, like, mandate free breast cancer screenings because there's so many people that weren't being, yeah.
It's fucked up. I have a complicated relationship with disability because my way of coping with the amount of pain I was in was to try to suppress the feelings about it. And I did it through productivity by working super hard, working all the time, working, just to like not have to connect to how I was actually feeling. And so like when I took a few months off to write the book and then I was just working on the book, I was like, oh, this is like super real experience. But even now, like I'm still hard, like it's still hard for me to be like, am I disabled? Like, do I have a disability?
Yeah.
Do I qualify for government benefits? Or maybe I should just suck it up. Like it's still there, that like internal voice is still there. And it's, I don't know how I'll get rid of it, but hopefully by the end of this like book tour I will have.
I've never thought about endometriosis as not being covered as a disability, given other things like celiac disease is listed now as a disability on a lot of those lists. And like, this isn't like a work disability unless I'm a taste tester, right? Like there's
Yeah.
Like donuts in the break room.
yeah, like I feel a little left out sometimes when people bring king cake to work, but it's not like disabling. Unless I get gluten, and then it's pretty disabling for 2 or 3 days. But yeah, I didn't even know that it wasn't listed. I think, sorry, go ahead.
I just want to say that when I had surgery, it cost me several $1,000s, and that was with my insurance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it had been listed as a disability, it would have been covered.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Yep, some of the things end up being listed as elective if you don't have the right blood work and screening work. So if they don't see anything for endo in the ultrasound, then like it's basically you're just choosing to have the other surgery in a lot of places according to the regulations. So, yeah, the insurance industry is messed up in the United States, and our healthcare industry is quite messed up.
Better in Canada.
No, it's not better in Canada. I think you guys have fewer bankruptcy filings because of medical bills.
That's true.
So I'm going to say it's a soapbox, but I'm happy to ask you the questions instead.
Okay.
So we've gone over there isn't a cure for endometriosis. Is there a prevention for endometriosis? Prevention.
You can't prevent it.
Is there any way to figure out who's more likely to have endometriosis?
No.
Is there any way to screen for endometriosis that isn't like an exploratory surgery?
Yes.
There is. What is that?
Ultrasound. But it's a controversial topic because not everyone knows how to read ultrasounds properly to see endo. And so you'll get sent to some like random tag. They'll be like, don't see anything.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, like I was diagnosed by ultrasound by a doctor. The doctor was doing the ultrasound. It wasn't a tech. And he was able to read it properly and see that I had endo in my bowel, my ovaries, and a few other places. And so it only sees the pelvic region. So if I had endo in my diaphragm or my lungs, he wouldn't have been able to see it that way. But he was able to see it immediately through like a transvaginal ultrasound, kind of like the diameter of the wand. And it's called like dynamic ultrasound, or it's UBES, UBESS level 2. It's a more refined imaging, but it has to be done by somebody who knows what they're looking at. And that's the challenge.
And it's not the standard machine they use for like general generic.
No, it's like a better.
Yeah. Right.
I don't know if we've actually said what endometriosis is.
She read a definition.
You did? Oh, thank God. Okay. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, cool. I was not diagnosed via ultrasound, but it was probably because a tech had looked at it. So my doctor was like, the only thing that I think this is because of the pain you're describing is endo, but we will only know via surgery. And so that's what I was told.
I mean, I had at least half a dozen transvaginal ultrasounds by people who didn't know how to read the images before I got this. So it was a lot of, there's nothing wrong with you, I don't see anything. And then I finally encountered somebody who could actually read the images.
Do you guys know how much research is being done on endometriosis, like at the national NIH level?
It's almost all tied to fertility or the drug development of drugs, such as Lindeman and Orlissa, which are GnRH agonists and antagonists that essentially put you into direct medical menopause. Has anyone ever had the pleasure of Lupron or Orlissa? Okay, Lupron is an injection, so it's not like a pill that you can just stop taking once you're having a bad time. They inject it in you and then it has to run its course. And it was originally developed as a prostate cancer drug. And then when the patent expired, they looked for another way to make money off of it. They extend their patent. And so they had it indicated for endometriosis. And it works by putting you into a state of temporary menopause, medical menopause. And It is so bad for your bones that you can only take it for 12 months out of your entire life because of the way that it leaches calcium out of your bones. And sometimes it's irreversible. The other drug, Orilissa, was just approved in 2018 by the FDA. It's very similar to Lupron, except it's a pill and not an injection. It costs $1,200 a month. And it has the same effect on your bones. You have to take it with add-back hormonal therapy to help limit the effect on your bones. But there have been stories about people in their 20s breaking their hips because of this drug. And these are the things that are given to us as solutions to our pain. And if any of you have endo or some kind of gynecological problem, you know that a doctor will put you through the paces. Try this first, try this other thing, try this drug, try this drug. And because of the influence that the makers of Lupron and Orilissa, the company's name AbbVie, they have a huge influence on prescribing practices of doctors around the world, and especially in the United States. And if you want to know if your doctor takes money from them, you can look them up on a database called Open Payments. If you want to know how much money your doctor is taking from these companies.
Back to the question.
Open Payments.
Open payments.
So
So,
studied in the book.
Yes. I break down how much money they take.
yeah.
Thank you, thank you.
No, remember your question that was, what advice would you give to someone in endo? Okay, I guess my advice would be to anyone. Your doctor doesn't know everything, and in fact, 90% of the time your doctor is just guessing. It's like, oh, here's a series of symptoms, this is what we think it is. Okay, that didn't work, here's a different thing, here's a different thing, because like the amount of effort and energy and like just the way that the medical industrial complex is built is like people, your doctor's not giving you, most likely, giving you the attention and focus that you deserve to like really diagnose what's happening. They're just like, here's a thing, here's a thing, here's a symptom, here's a thing. And if you are wondering, like this is my personal experience, but also watch the show Dope Sick, because that's exactly what happens is doctors are being given kickbacks to prescribe Oxycontin based off of what really happened in Appalachia. And yeah, it's like doctors were incentivized to do this. It's like, oh, you have some sort of pain, here's Oxycontin, here's Oxy, and meanwhile they're getting like free trips to like Puerto Rico to stay at a resort because those are their kickbacks from the company. So anyway, yeah, your doctor doesn't know everything. Trust your body, and if you're a doctor who's not listening to you, find a doctor who will listen to you. Michelle was given a recommendation recently about a woman doctor, right, in New Orleans.
Burnett.
So if you want to see Michelle afterwards for a new gyno, she comes highly recommended.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
What is the impact of the relationship between pregnancy and endo? I know in the old days they used to say getting pregnant was the cure.
They still say that.
They
still say that.
What? No, they
It's
don't.
not a cure.
Holy
I
shit.
figured not, because that's what I've been hearing. So now I'm curious, what is the relationship?
There is none.
Okay.
They've looked at, they've mixed up like correlation and causation. They don't actually understand. Some people do have better experiences with endo after having kids. Some people have worse. And I interviewed several people for my book, and I've spoken to other people since writing the book that said endo was worse than giving birth. And I talked to people that had multiple children, and they were like, I would rather give birth than have endo.
Jeez.
But I just also want to say, like, the experience of going to a doctor is a really double-edged sword, because you have to play this game of, I know what I'm talking about, maybe more than you do, because I live in my body, and I've also done so much research about what I'm living with. And you studied endo for 30 minutes across your entire medical degree. And I live in this body every fucking day. But what you know and what you've read in scientific journals is not considered knowledge. It's not considered truth, because they're a doctor and you're not. And that power differential is very poisonous in the doctor's office. And it's really like you go there because I need help. I can't do surgery on myself. Like I need someone to help me. But then all they say is take some drugs or get pregnant or lose weight. It's always about what you can do for yourself because the system has failed to be accountable to you. And so, yeah, like I'm not surprised. Like people are still being told, get pregnant, it'll solve your period pain. And it's not true.
Wild recommendation.
But also, like, I got that recommendation. I went off the pill when I was 26, and I was like, can I have a hysterectomy? I don't want kids. No, you'll change your mind. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I guarantee you I will not change my mind. I do not like children. And they were like, you're gonna feel differently about this later. Pregnancy cures endo. And I was like, so I can just throw the baby in the garbage after I have it? Like, why would I just have a child to maybe help with my pain? Like, and then if it doesn't help, then I'm in pain and I have a child? Like, why would this be a solution? But I heard it from so many different people all the time.
I had a friend in high school get pregnant on purpose at the doctor's.
Did it help?
Well, she's got 2 more. I don't know what her life's like now.
Sounds like she's got a busy life.
Sorry, I saw it.
But yeah, I was just gonna, I like work in the health field just because like endo is linked as like a period only thing instead of a whole body disability thing, which is one reason it's not listed in. But they were like, oh, if you stop the period, you stop the pain because they're not known. But I will say they're a lot better about, with doctors, if you research them, putting what they do in. Like when I found my OB, I looked for somebody because I thought I had PCOS, and my doctor was like, everybody has pain on their period. And so I like looked for it, and it was a new resident. It's hit or miss, but residents who are younger are getting like more ethical training in their medical school degree. So you might have luck going for somebody younger, and you can like look to see what they specialize in or subspecialty, and that might be more helpful.
Yeah, the fact
But
that
it depends. It really depends.
Yeah, like in my experience, it doesn't.
Yeah, because some of them are really cocky because they've been like, well, I'm a doctor.
But like,
now.
think of who becomes a doctor. Think of the type of background that you come from to be able to pay for medical school.
Yeah.
That's not available to everybody who has the
Yeah.
potential to be an empathetic and good ethical doctor.
Yeah.
I would say, from my experience with the medical industrial complex, nurse practitioners are the best listeners I've ever met. My current what do we call them? GP?
Family doctor, GCP.
Yeah, PCP is actually a
That's what I think because we don't say PCP in Canada, so I'm like, what?
yeah, primary care doctor, and also my drug dealer. Is a nurse practitioner. He has his PhD or whatever, a PhD in nursing. And my psychiatrist actually is a nurse practitioner who specializes in psychiatry. And for my, just between those two compared to all the doctors I've known, amazing listeners because they're nurses at heart as opposed to a doctor. And like just when you just think about like the care training that's involved in that, the bedside manner, like the what are you experiencing, how are you, what's going on. Like I know them so well, and it's the first time I've really known someone that I consider my doctor, even though technically they're not a doctor. And same with my pelvic floor therapist. Shout out to pelvic floor therapists. Like I spend an hour a week with this woman, and half the time her fingers are inside my vagina, and we're like, we really know each other. I helped her pick out doorknobs for her new. She was like, I want some cool doorknobs. She's like showing me pictures of her other hands like inside me. Objectively, that's strange, but it's just like the level of like comfort and care and like familiarity that we have with each other that I've literally never had with my gyno, who's a great gyno, but like not a very sensitive or like human.
But like, can we just take a minute to appreciate that almost, like in terms of gender, the majority of nurses are women. And the majority of doctors, including gynecologists, And there's a reason why, like, because people are socialized by their parents, by the medical system, by their training to like have different attitudes and approaches to their patients. And I think that like we can't have this conversation without recognizing maybe the reason, even if your nurse practitioner is a cis man, like, you know, like he's been trained by people who kind of came up in the system where they like had to care extra about their patients, you know, and I find that like so interesting. We need to, I think, be cognizant of that balance. And also nurse practitioners are paid not nearly as much as doctors.
You're right, no, absolutely. Yeah.
Do you guys have any familiarity with what people tend to get diagnosed with along the way to endometriosis when it's actually endometriosis? Like what is things that are commonly the cause of the delay in getting endometriosis?
IBS. Okay. I feel like everybody, for any problem, celiac, endo, PCOS, schizophrenia. Maybe you just have IBS.
We love IBS.
Why don't you just like have a colonoscopy? That's super fun.
Just take probiotics.
Just take probiotics. Or maybe just don't eat dairy.
Yeah.
Yeah, IBS is the big one. In terms of other conditions, like you're depressed, you're anxious, have you considered taking antidepressants is a big one. Like obesity and like problems related to obesity, big one.
I was told because I was having pain while orgasming that maybe my partner was just too big for me and I should consider dating someone else.
True story.
That's a real thing. That's a real recommendation. Yeah.
That's a pretty common one. And pelvic pain is like so misunderstood. They're like, well, why don't we just have more sex?
Yeah.
Why don't you just
Stretch it out a little bit.
Yeah. You lubricate. Oh my God, kids, like how many times I've heard that one?
Have you heard of lube? It's like, I invented lube.
No, but really my body did, so it's like I get it. Like it's fine. That's not the problem.
So we usually think about endometriosis as being pelvic pain, right? When we say pelvic pain, where do we mean, right?
Okay, right here.
My pelvic floor is constantly clenched because that's how I learned to ignore it, ignore my feeling. So like even now, I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta relax. Because that's why Kegels are the devil for endometriosis patients, because if anything, you need to relax your pelvic floor, not make it stronger. So there's that, and then you also like, because it seems like the only thing that like family doctors know about is Kegels when it comes to the pelvic floor. So that's a big one. And also I've learned that I clench my jaw and my pelvic floor at the same time. So every time I'm like, my teeth hurt, I'm like, gotta check in with the veg.
I think as people who've been socially conditioned as women, we're told to like suck it in, like to keep your core tight because like it's unattractive to have a belly that sticks out or whatever, like that lower, like a fupa or like lower belly stick out, whatever. And it was through pelvic floor therapy that my therapist was like, you're constantly tight, like between, like, relax, like breathe deep. And I'm like, no, but like if I relax that, then like my stomach sticks out. She's like, yeah, that's okay. It's really bad that you're constantly like holding it like this. And so I think in general, women do that. And they don't realize that they're tightening this part of themselves that's actually like really, really, really bad to hold tight. And so part of my therapy is just like big belly breathing, and like squatting and just like big belly breathing, just like letting it all hang out, you know, for lack of a better term. And that's like a way to like give space and air and like hold that in a way that's healthier than just being like, oh God, no one can see my belly.
but like you're conditioned to do that,
Right.
for sure.
Let's see. I'm just gonna soapbox for a minute. Did you guys know that most of the funding for endometriosis runs through the same very underfunded institute at the NIH that funds all of like maternal health, infant health, child health, fertility, right? Like because it gets grouped in with gynecological disorders as opposed to other inflammatory disorders.
I did know that.
You want to share anything else about that? Because I'm going to say, if you care, it does actually make a difference if you email the NIH, if you email your Congress people, right, to say that like this needs to be funded outside of that institute, where funding should be set aside to study this, not related to fertility, right? Because people with uteruses are more than just a potential baby carrier, right? And so I know researchers who try to study endo, and the only way they can get money is to link it to fertility. And they're like, we don't actually, not that we don't care about babies, but like they're actually interested in serving people with endometriosis and figuring out the cellular processes to maybe come up with drug regimens that would help with the actual inflammation instead of just pain meds or suppressing periods, right? And so, as an advocacy thing, remembering like these bigger structural things that put endo treatment in the same office that is mostly about getting babies out of people, right? So most gynecologists are going to be way undertrained in endo, which your book talks about a lot. Like we need to separate the fact that uteruses exist for other things and have other problems from baby making, right? Broadly speaking.
Absolutely, yeah. Like, one of the things I found out in my book that had not been reported anywhere was that a couple of years ago, someone who was a congressperson stood up on the floor and told her story about having endo, and she, told all her fellow congress people all about her struggles. And then by the end of it, they voted to invest $26 million into endo research over 2 years. And the Endometriosis Foundation of America stood up and took credit for it. And
It's
all
very
sorts of
American.
and everybody patted themselves on the back for what a good job. And that money never got budgeted for in the appropriations bill, and it never materialized. So that $26 million was not real, but everybody treated it like it was real. It was covered by all the major media. And I'm apparently the only one who discovered, I actually emailed the right people to be like, what happened to that money? Because I can't find it in your funding report. And they're like, oh, it never got passed. And I was like, it wasn't that hard for me to find out.
It's also not that much money in medical research.
Yeah, $26 million over 2 years, $13 million a year, it's fucking nothing. They spend more than that studying hay fever, literally.
Yeah.
Like, I looked it up. They spend way more on hay fever than endo, still to this day.
I think those were most of the questions I had for you guys. I don't know how we're doing on time, right? When they want to go home.
Yeah. Does anybody have questions or things you want to say? No?
Except
did it all.
This is like a broader anecdote, but like so we're both in research, and up until like very recently, most research labs just in general only study male animals. And one of the reasons is they considered females to be inconsistent because of their hormone imbalances,
Oh my
because of
God.
their menstrual cycles.
Oh my God.
And so like, not just with endometriosis, but like basically anything that affects somebody as female as birth is understudied, like depression, anxiety, which we know affect women differently, or us and female
Drug
differently.
research.
Yeah, drug research. And so like my lab at LSU, we're the only lab that has both male and female mice. And we're studying renal stuff that's like not as related. So that's like one of the biggest issues.
I talk a lot about this in the book.
Oh,
so you're
I'm gonna be like all over it. It's so frustrating.
But also, that's like, can we just appreciate that this assumption assumes that males do not have hormones, which is not true. They also have hormones that affect their brains and their bodies. Like, but somehow it's just our hormones.
Similarly, when we talk about research about periods, we tend to remove everybody from study who has endometriosis, who has
Goodness.
PCOS, who has thyroid disorders, who has basically anything that might make their period not a normal period, right? In the like air quotes, but I'm holding two things so I can't do it right.
We only get the pure readers.
Which is it's absurd when we know around 1 in 10 people who are born female have endo, around the same amount have PCOS. Additional people have adeno and fibroids and recurrent cysts, right? So you're looking at 25, 30, 40% of people who anything we know about periods, we don't actually know about those populations, right? So when they study birth control, those people are not counted. When they study effects of exercise on periods, those people usually not studied, right? That doesn't even get into queer, non-binary people who don't see appropriate treatment when they go to doctors, who are often misgendered when they go to doctors, who are forced into like really pink waiting rooms full of pregnant people just to get basic care for a body part, right? So like there's a lot to be fixed with understanding things that happen to the uterus or the broader body of people who are assigned female at birth. But part of it does need to be separating it from like the idea of women's health, because that doesn't serve, like it puts women in this weird side pocket of the medical establishment so that, tons of stuff only is done by OB/GYNs, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And like just so that everyone knows, there are some cis males with endo. They're in the literature they're called super rare, but maybe they're super rare because we don't actually study it. Like we don't actually know how rare it truly is. And so that's just, maybe they don't have the same like symptomology, like maybe they don't have like extremely painful parts of their, hormonal cycles and that kind
You're
of
not
stuff.
getting the big estrogen
Yeah.
swings that would cause symptoms to.
Yeah. But like in terms of non-binary and trans people with endo or PCOS or whatever, like it's just like adding insult to injury in terms of the care that a lot of people receive. And it is just like, I kind of, in the book I kind of call them so basically my argument is that we all suffer from the misogyny in healthcare, no matter what our gender is, because trans and non-binary people are often treated as female adjacent, regardless of whether they're trans men or trans women or, however they may present. Because the cis male, patriarchal system has just rejected people outright. And so now it kind of falls into this woman adjacent category. And that helps nobody.
Yeah.
And it's just so harmful when you're just trying to be I'm just a person in pain. Can you just fucking care about me? And yeah, it's just so infuriating to see just how many more extra steps people have to go through to be seen as a human being.
Thank you everyone for being here.
That was enlightening.
Yes, thank you to Nikki Ummel, Tracey Lindeman, Katie Lee, one around. Yes. So we're going to take a little break. Make sure to sign up for the open mic and buy books and mingle and show all the love. Do we want to plug any of our upcoming events while everyone's here?
Sure. If you identify as a poet, or even if you don't, we have a poetry contest that closes April 15th.
There are flyers hanging out and about. Take one for yourself and 3 for your friends. That's also to sign up to be a vendor, a performer, or a reader in any genre at our literary festival. It is a really big thing. We have a launch with spoken word and slam poetry on Friday night, June 16th. We have a full day of readings and an after hours for some more risque stuff if that's your thing on Saturday, June 17th. And then we're going to have a play and a brunch on Sunday to close the festival. So sign up for that through the QR code. And we also have a workshop with Bradley Shaw at the end of the month, correct? On April 30th.
It's
And that
about
is
the-
also at Blue Cypress Books in the house. Yeah, and it is specifically a poetry workshop, love poetry. It's a love poetry workshop. So all the love, sign up for open mic, and also thank you to Windowsill Pies.
We
Thank you to Windowsill Pies. Okay, one more, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you so much to Nikki for putting up with all of my texts and being like, is everything okay? Is everything okay? And also thank you to Katie for being here and talking with us. I just want to mention that everything over by Blue Cypress is, other than the books, are free for you to take. You gotta pay for the books, but the stickers, the coupons, like the postcards, all that stuff, you take it, please take it. And yeah, thanks. And if you want your book signed, I am more than happy to do so.
And please buy Tracey's book. She's had, I've been following you on Twitter. She's had a hell of a time traversing the United States without renting a car. Like horror stories of bus situations and trains and like spending so much money because our country is not set up the way that Canada is.
No, Canada doesn't have.
Okay, then never mind. The way that Europe is, like we have like horrible transit, and she spent a lot of money on like horrible bus rides. So buy a book. Buy a book. Help her get to her next destination.
And if there's no more books left, you can get them still from Blue Cypress.
Not